We did things a little different today as far as the beginning. We were up here speaking, myself, Derek, Ray, and we didn't know if we wanted to stop in between. We didn't know if we wanted to just do all 4 songs consecutive. So we had that decision to make. Did we want to go 2 and 2 like the Florida Gators? Oh, no. Or did we want to do 4 consecutive like the Florida State Seminoles? Oh, no. So that's what we chose. That's what we chose. Could you lock that door so people don't leave? I see Christina. Did you hear anything I just said? Oh, you're good.
No, she meant it.
Were you here for the worship part, the singing and all that?
Yeah.
Because we didn't know which way to go with it, how we wanted to break it up. You know, sometimes someone gets up here and speaks in between. Sometimes we go 2 and 2, like the Florida Gators. But instead, today we chose to go 4 consecutive. You know what that number is? I'll let your husband tell you. All right, so I feel like today's the day we need to have security in the parking lot to protect my truck. But it is what it is. Pastor Joe's not here. He asked me to go to continue the series that we're doing. So we're in Exodus chapter 16 through 17, verse 6. And whenever it's my turn to preach, I always give them a call and I say, what would you like me to highlight? Because we both believe in the same God. We both read the same Bible. And I'd say in most cases, we all agree. But I think you would agree, when reading something in the Bible, different times, in different situations, it may hit you differently. God's still saying the same thing, but there might be a different focus. You might pick up on something different. So this was one of those rare times when Pastor Joe said, this is what I think you should highlight. And I kind of pulled my Scooby-Doo. Huh? And I see it there. I do. And as I read and reread the passage throughout the past couple of weeks, and I listened to the Bible app, reading it like this each morning on my way to work, I was getting kind of a different vibe. I definitely see what he says. So we're going to focus on both of those here. I'm titling this, If You Give an Israelite a Pancake. Now, some of you are probably scratching your heads, wondering what is going on here. But if you've worked with children, if you have small children, you kind of know what angle we're going with. There is a book called, If You Give, go ahead, tell me. If you give a pig a pancake. No, I'm not comparing the Israelites to pigs. I actually almost changed this morning because I did not, well played. I didn't want any death threats, whatever. But that's where we're at. Could you go ahead and play that video for me? And this is me awkwardly moving around, forgetting where the monitor's at.
If you give a pig a pancake, if you give a pig by Laura Numeroff. Written by Laura Numeroff. Illustrated by Felicia Bond. If you give a pig a pancake, she'll want some syrup to go with it. You'll give her some of your favorite maple syrup. She'll probably get all sticky, so she'll want to take a bath. She'll ask you for some bubbles. When you give her the bubbles, she'll probably ask you for a toy. You'll have to find your rubber duck. The duck will remind her of the farm where she was born. She might feel homesick and want to visit her family. She'll want you to come too. She'll look through your closet for a suitcase. Then she'll look under your bed. When she's under your bed, she'll find your old tap shoes. She'll try them on. She'll probably need something special to wear with them. When she's all dressed, she'll ask for some music. You'll play your very best piano piece, and she'll start dancing. Then she'll want you to take her picture. So you'll have to get your camera. When she sees the picture, she'll ask you to take more. Then she'll want to send one to each of her friends. You'll have to give her some envelopes and stamps and take her to the mailbox. On the way, she'll see the tree in your backyard. She'll want to build a tree house. So you'll have to get her some wood, a hammer, and some nails. When the tree house is finished, she'll want to decorate it. She'll ask for some wallpaper and glue. When she hangs the wallpaper, she'll get all sticky. Feeling sticky will remind her of your favorite maple syrup. She'll probably ask you for some. And chances are, if she asks you for some syrup, she'll want a pancake to go with it. A big thank you to Wyatt B. for this book suggestion.
Yes, thank you, Wyatt B. We appreciate that. All right, so this video really is something that I really thought about when I was reading here, because whenever I read about the Israelites and they're leaving Egypt, God's taking care of it. God's providing. But it seems like it's never enough for them. They always want something else, or they just want to complain. And we see in this preschool level book, every time the pig got something, she needed something else. Not that she needed it, she wanted it. And I feel the same way about the Israelites. Now, granted, they had some needs. They did have some needs. The pig had some wants. But I kind of feel the Israelites should have had this faith and trust in God. But to me, it just didn't, it seemed like they were doubting when they were always complaining. It wasn't like you and I would pray. Hopefully you and I would pray and just asking God to be in a situation and handle things. This was kind of like, oh great, this is going to happen. You're going to allow this? Come on. So, one thing I took from this is sometimes we treat God like he's a server at Applebee's or any other restaurant. Okay? You might ask for your boneless wings with a special sauce, but you want them a little crispier, so you're going to ask him, hey, can you go ahead and double batter these? Fry these extra hard. God doesn't operate that way. God's going to provide. He's going to give us what we need, but that's not always what we want. He determines what we need. We do not. He answers prayer in his way. A lot of times I'll have people say, well, why doesn't God answer my prayer? Well, he does. God answers all prayers. Well, I prayed that this would happen, and it did not. We didn't say that God answers all your prayers according to your will. No, he answers them according to his will. So sometimes the answer isn't yes. If you did not get what you wanted, or things did not work out the way you were hoping they would work out, then the answer was obviously no, or not yet. Keep waiting. Keep asking. So once we get into Exodus chapter 16, verse 1, we say, Then they set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the sons of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. I love the specificity there. It's like, second day. The whole congregation of the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The sons of Israel said to them, If only we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. They're remembering how great Egypt was. But when they were in Egypt, they weren't saying, hey man, this is great. we got these pots of meat, we can eat bread till we're full, life is good. No, the Egyptians, they're treating us so bad, we need to get out of here. So, God delivered them. I do agree with Pastor Joe. I do feel that we need to ask God for things. We need to pray. Sometimes God may even wait for us to ask. That's the dependency. Okay? We're to be dependent on God, and by doing that, we're showing our faith and our trust in Him. I think a statement like, For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger, I don't think that's showing faith. I don't think that's showing trust. That's being a little snarky. And yes, I do understand that they're grumbling right now to Moses and Aaron. I'm aware of that, and I know they're not God. But God is using them right now as His mouthpiece. So they are the speakers for God at this point. So when they are grumbling to Moses and Aaron, they're grumbling to God. And it's not a, Lord, please help us. It's just a, why did you do this? I think those are two very different attitudes. And when we come to the Lord in prayer, we need to check ourselves. We need to check our heart. And we need to pray, showing faith, showing trust, just not showing disdain, because I feel that's where we're going here. So, beforehand, before we got here, they were in Egypt. They left Egypt. God parted the Red Sea. He took care of them there. They didn't have any water. The water they came across was bitter. He healed the water, as Scripture says. The water was good to drink at that point. So every time there was an issue, God took care of it. So why are we at this point right here where they're asking, why all of this just for us to die of hunger now? They don't have that intimate relationship with God that you see Moses has. Moses gets it. Moses' aggravation is not with God. His frustration is with the Israelites. So God delivered them. Here we are, and yet they asked again. We go to verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether or not they will walk in my instruction. By the way, this is not limited just to the Old Testament. This happens now. Okay? God gives us instructions for us to follow. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. So Moses and Aaron said to all the sons of Israel, At evening you will know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for He hears. And I highlighted that. He hears your grumblings against the Lord. And what are we that you grumble against us? So when we're grumbling, or when we're calling out, when we're asking the Lord, He hears us. He hears the grumblings. He would probably like to hear more appreciation. I know that's how I am. But then again, I am not God. I will never apply for that position. So God answered again. Okay? They asked, God answered again, and he gave instruction. This is what you're going to do. Well, Moses said, this will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening and bread to the full in the morning. For the Lord hears your grumblings, which you grumble against him. And what are we? Your grumblings are not against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, say to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your grumblings. It came about as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the sons of Israel, that they looked toward the wilderness. And behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the grumblings of the sons of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. So it came about at evening that the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of the dew evaporated, behold, on the surface of the wilderness there was a fine flake-like thing, fine as the frost on the ground. When the sons of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? So I'm going to stop right there. They were hungry. They were thirsty. They asked God to provide. They were used to pots of meat. They were used to probably loaves of bread. But God provided in a different way that they did not see coming. One that they were not used to. So they had to ask each other, what is this? What's going on? And when I read that, I am reminded that when I ask God to deliver me or to solve a situation or take care of something, I always have a certain idea in my head, and I'm sure you do as well. But it doesn't always play out the way I would have done it in my playbook. Maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing. I'm going to assume it's a good thing, because I'm going to say that God probably knows better than I do. And when I say probably, I mean absolutely. So when the sons of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather of it every man as much as he should eat. You shall take an omer apiece, according to the number of persons each of you has in his tent. So omer was a unit of measurement. Don't quote me on this. I think I ended up reading that it was equivalent to 2 quarts, give or take. My Old Testament map conversions and measurement conversions are a little rusty, so please bear with me there. So once we get to verse 13, so it came about that the quails came up and covered the camp in the morning. Did I read it down? Sorry about that. Okay, the sons of Israel did so, and some gathered much and some little. When they measured it with an omer, he who had gathered much had no excess, and he who had gathered little had no lack. Every man gathered as much as he should eat. Moses said to them, let no man leave any of it until morning. But they did not listen to Moses, and some left part of it until the morning. And it bred worms and became foul. And Moses was angry with them. They gathered it morning by morning, every man as much as he should eat. But when the sun grew hot, it would melt. So, again, God gave directions. They were willing to take what God had given, but they were not willing to obey. They were not willing to follow his lead. And I understand that because sometimes things don't make sense. Like I said before we read this part right here. In our head, it's going to happen one way, or that's what we expect because it just seems the easiest or it makes the most sense. But God throws a curveball. And the way I like to explain this is Common Core math. Now, we all would agree that 1 plus 1 is 2. All right? And that makes sense to us. So when we pray to God to do something for us or to solve things, we're expecting something simple, straight to the point, what is most logical to us. But God isn't logical for us. Our human brains cannot fathom what God is capable of. We're just not wired that way. We are not God. So I like to compare it to a Common Core math problem. And bear with me, my notes were a little scattered here. I'm having to go back and forth. But the Common Core math problem that I wrote down, for example, if you have 4 pencils, and obviously this is not a real Common Core math problem, it is a joke. But sometimes I feel like this is what I get from God when I feel I need this. When I need the 1 plus 1 is 2, I get, if you have 4 pencils and 7 apples, how many pancakes will fit on the roof? The answer is purple, because aliens don't wear hats. So that's one of my favorite Common Core, as a teacher, Common Core math jokes there. But it also reminds me of how we try to put God in a box and we expect certain things. We expect it to be done a certain way, just like the Israelites did. And God surprises us. He catches us off guard and still has his will. And again, if I skip something or I repeat something, my apologies, going back and forth. Isn't what I was planning on. But at Exodus 16:22 through 26, now on the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one. When all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, then he said to them, "This is what the Lord meant. Tomorrow is a Sabbath observance, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over put aside to be kept until morning." So they put it aside until morning, as Moses had ordered. And it did not become foul, nor was there any worm in it. Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none." So the bread went bad. There were worms in it, because God said, do not keep any. Do not have leftovers. Do not leave it for the next day. They disobeyed. It went bad. Well, when he said, "Hey, take enough for the 7th day on the 6th day," nothing went bad. Was it special bread? No. It was God. It was his purpose. What he said was going to happen, happened. And they, at this point, you'd think they would understand, okay, God said this is going to happen, let's follow that. But they're doing what a lot of us still do today, simple nature, human nature, where we go rogue, we go to business for ourselves and say, you know what, this makes sense to me, let me do it this way. Or we may be used to doing things a certain way. This is the way we've always done it, so let's continue to do it. But that doesn't work with God. Your tradition does not please God. When God tells you to do something, when he tells us to do something, that's what he expects. Now, it came about on the 7th day that some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Remain every man in his place. Let no man get out of his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. Yes, I agree. When we have a need, we need to ask. But I also think, more importantly here, when we ask, we need to be willing to listen and accept that answer. And sometimes listening and accepting that answer involves follow through. It involves following directions, following instructions. You know, God was very clear. Did enough for 2 days and the 6th day. But they still went doing their own thing. So I'm going to ask you right now, please don't show hands, but ask yourself, is that me? Am I in God's Word? Am I talking to God? Am I praying to God? And He's telling me something. But it's just not the answer that I wanted. It's not what I'm comfortable doing. This is the way that I've always done things. So I'm just more comfortable doing this. You're more comfortable doing this. Okay, but you called out to God for a reason. So something is going on. Something caused you not to be comfortable. It's a bit of a bunny trail, but I do remember hearing a story. Love stories. There was a woman. She was making a pot roast, right? And her daughter was helping her with the pot roast. And I forget the whole procedure. She seasoned it, did whatever she had to do, and then she ended up cutting a third of it off. And if you heard the story, maybe my measurements are off. I already proved that to you earlier. But she cut about a third off, put the rest in the oven, and discarded what she'd cut off. And the daughter said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you being wasteful? Why are you throwing away this part of the pot roast?" Quick show of hands. Who's heard this before? Who knows where it's going? Okay. All right, well, I'll just continue. I'll just move on then. You know what's going on. But discarded that part, and the daughter just said, "Why are you doing this? This makes no sense." And she said, "Well, this is the way my mom did it. And her mom did it. So this was just something they had always done, so it seemed right." Long story short, daughter ended up finding out, I don't know if she was able to talk to the grandma or the great-grandma, but ended up finding out the only reason they cut off that part of the pot roast and discarded it was because their pan was too small. Yeah, the pan was too small, so they got rid of some meat. Now, Darren, I see you chopping, and that's you and I. We're chopping that up, we're pulling out another pan, we're sauteing it, we're throwing out some onions, some mushrooms, we're doing something, we're not wasting that. But sometimes we do things because of certain situations that they dictate that. And it makes no sense. Don't get stuck in a rut. Okay? Don't start relying on yourself. Don't rely on, well, this is what I've always done. This makes most sense. My friend does this and it works for him or it works for her. When you're going to pray to God, that's the first part. It's easy to ask for help. It's easy to ask for guidance. But then we have to submit and listen and hear what God has to say. And I'm telling you, that was a problem with the Israelites. It was more about, do this for me, do this for me. I want this, I want it that way. I really thought doing a boy band reference there, but we'll keep going. But it's tough. I get it. Y'all can probably tell this is annoying me so much. All right, there we go. It's hard when you're used to things or you think you know better. But ask yourself, do you know better? Do you know better if here you are again asking God to fix something or to change things? All right, so they ended up with the wonderful bread, the bread that they were questioning. The house of Israel named it manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and its taste was like wafers and honey. Now, the fat part of me really pays attention to this verse, because I'm like, I wonder what that would taste like. Right now, I would like a thin wafer with coriander and some honey, just because I'm wondering how delicious it is. But keep in mind, they had to eat this for quite a while. Then Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Let an omer full of it be kept throughout your generations, that that they may see the bread that I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of the land of Egypt. Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omerful of manna in it, and place it before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron placed it before the testimony to be kept. The sons of Israel ate the manna 40 years until they came to an uninhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. And now an omer is a tenth of an ephah. So I hope y'all are writing that down for your conversion test next week. Oh, I said test. People say, oh, what's going on? There's a test. There's a test. Now, God gave simple instructions. Do this, don't do that. He gave instructions because they asked. Again, I agree. He likes us to call out and he likes us to ask. But when you're given specific directions, do it. This also reminds me of one of my favorite commanders, good old Naaman. I'm assuming most of y'all know the story. Hopefully you do. He was well respected for the great victories in battle. King loved him. Life was good, except one minor detail: his skin was peeling off. He had leprosy, and he was given a way to cure himself of that leprosy. Something very, very simple. All he had to do was go dip in the water 7 times. And he said, nah, I'm good. What? He did not like that river. He said, well, there are other rivers that are better. How about I dip in that? His expectations were they were going to put on a little show, maybe some pointing, maybe some hand waving, a prayer, a blessing, something was going to happen, and whoo, the leprosy was gone. That's what he wanted. That's what he expected. Those were his expectations, but God didn't meet his expectations. God was still going to provide the answer and the solution that he wanted. But he wanted it his way. He did not want to do the very simple thing that God had sent to him, that God had instructed him to do. When we call out to God, just like the Israelites, when we're expecting from God something from God, just like Naaman, just like anybody, we have to humble ourselves. We have to be willing to submit. Yes, God likes it when we ask, but it's a two-way street. We need to be willing to listen, hear, submit, and follow. Now then, all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. And there was no water for the people to drink. You know where this is going, right? There was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why is this a fight? We go to Costco, we go to Aldi, when we're short of something, we go to Publix. We always have food at our house. Okay? There may not be what everybody wants, but if you open enough doors, you're going to find something. And my kids know, if they want something, they don't need to come get in my face and quarrel with me and say, have you left me to starve? All I see are greens, and you know I prefer the ramen noodles, the spicy one with the veggies. Okay. He's like, hey, what's for lunch? Hey, can I have a snack? Yeah, you know what stuff is. All right. Oh, we're running low on ramen. Can we get some? Yeah, cool. We'll put it on the list. That's our interaction. And I'm not saying God is your personal shopper. I'm not saying that. But the grumbling that we see here, and the quarreling, and the demanding, why? You know God's going to take care of you. God's going to provide. Yes, you've been walking around the wilderness for quite some time. You probably have some blisters on your feet. I get it. But you're complaining about food and water, which you've been traveling around for quite a while. God has been providing, so why would he stop? Why would he stop? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water, and they grumbled against Moses and said, Why now have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Yeah, sure, you're thinking of the livestock. That's your main concern. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, What shall I do to this people? A little more, and they will stone me. Let's contrast Moses and the rest of the Israelites. He doesn't want to be in between. He's that buffer right there. And he's lamenting to God. God, I just can't. I can't with these people. I'm done. They're done with me. You keep providing, but they're mad at you, but they take it out on me. I just can't today. Can you handle this? And I get that frustration. Because somebody that works with people, with students, with parents, with teachers, I too have those days. I'm sure everyone here, if they're honest, can say, I've had that day. Actually, today's that day. Pastor Jason, look at your watch. You got to go. My apologies. My apologies. So, most of us concerned. It's like, what do you want me to do? I can't with these people. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. And take in your hand your staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He named the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarrel of the sons of Israel, and because they tested the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not? I get it. A long trip. There can be some frustrations. I wasn't walking that long. We drove to Maine not too long ago, and we drove back. About 30 hours in the car or so. Glad I don't have to walk that far and walk that long. But there were times where there were just some frustrations there. Because, I can only sit for so long. I don't want to hear the music everyone else wants to hear. They don't want to hear the podcast that I want to listen to. They definitely don't want to hear my music. So we just had to change some things. There was frustration. But you know what really helped out the frustration level? Jesse. Do you know how Jesse helped the frustration level? She was like our little Moses, because God had given her instructions on how to deal with us, and we had more snacks in that van than you could find at a 7-Eleven. All right, it was crazy. So after a while, I got to see every time we were ready to lash out, Woman, you made us go on this trip to see your family, for I may starve upon the way. Ooh, pretzels. And then these pretzels are salty. Ooh, thank you for the beverage. And that was pretty much the drive there and the drive back. So today we talked about me never being satisfied while I'm driving, We talked about what happens when you give a pig a pancake, and both of those relate to the Israelites. No matter how much God provided, there was always something else. And I get it, circumstances change, and you may have more requests, but there came a point where I knew all I had to do was go. Someone's going to hand me lunch. Or I could say, oh, thirsty, what do we have in the cooler? We had different sports springs. I forget everything we had, but you know what would be nice for next time? Capri Sun. Pacific Cooler to be exact. And not the watered down ones they do now. I want all that high fructose corn syrup. But that would be nice. So again, here I am. Things were provided for me, but not exactly the way I would have done it. What is this? What is this? I can't say that it's a cow. Kombucha? What is this? What is this? And I'm telling you, that's the same thing the Israelites were thinking. They're thinking, all right, we asked, God's going to provide. It's going to be like the Brazilian steakhouse, you know, the guy's just going to come around. They got a big thing of meat on the big sword and just cut out, put it on your plate. But no, some bird-looking things start walking around. What is this? And now they're ready for the bread. And you know, they have that pan de queijo, which is the cheese bread of the Brazilian steakhouse. That's what I would want. But they get something that looks like frost on the ground. Like, what is this? Can you imagine that conversation? You try it. You try it. Oh, you try it. Eventually someone tried it. So I do understand the frustrations that they were having. But after God providing so many times, at what point does your attitude change? And here I am, 43. So I've been walking around this wilderness for a while as well. And we needed to see some maturity with the Israelites. And I know I'm going to surprise you when I tell you, I feel I have matured. I have matured, spiritually. Maybe not in, walking around in interactions. But I've matured because God's conditioned me to do so. God has put me in those situations where I've had to depend on Him. I've had to rely on Him. And it continues to happen. And I'd like to say, in most cases, I'm going to respond accordingly. But every now and then, there's a little bit of Israelite in me that pops out. That's not the way I would do it. Which is funny because recently I got my 23andMe back, my ancestry DNA, and I did not find any Israelites. I did not. But let me tell you, every now and then, the Israelite in me is strong. It likes to pop out. So we asked for temporary relief from our suffering. That's what the Israelites did. They wanted food. Like, oh, I'm so hungry. I'm so thirsty. We asked for temporary relief from that suffering. God gave us what we need. John 6:35, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. So they were asking for these physical needs. And we still have physical needs. But God was prepping them. He was getting them ready. It's not the physical bread that they... I need it too. Y'all got to miss what I was seeing, so I just want to let them know I can do it too. So when you read the Old Testament, you'll find there are a lot of things that are foreshadowing or leading up to something else happening in the New Testament. And this right here, I believe the manna was a direct correlation. It was putting in the thoughts of, here comes Jesus. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will not hunger, and he who believes in me will never thirst. John 4:14, but whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never get thirsty again. In fact, the water I will give him will become a well of water springing up in him for eternal life. So they wanted food. They wanted bread. They wanted some meat. They wanted some water. He delivered all of that. Maybe not on their terms, but he still delivered. They asked. He answered. But the answer was so much more than they could really understand. God gave us what we needed because he gave us his Son. He gave us forgiveness. He gave us salvation. Through his Son, we have forgiveness. And because of that forgiveness, we have salvation. And it's something that lasts. It's not like the manna. It's not like the bread that the next day it had spoiled and it had worms in it. Okay? He gave us something that lasts eternity. It's not something short-term. It's not temporary like the suffering that they experienced. He gave us a Son, forgiveness, and salvation. And all we have to do is ask. So I'm going to close this in prayer. I'm going to ask that you think about that for me. If you have any questions, feel free to see me afterwards. If you want to talk, if you want me to pray with you, we can definitely do that. We can always do that. But just think, am I depending on God? Am I calling out to God? And even better, if I'm doing so, when I'm doing so, am I willing to listen? Because I know people that come and seek advice. And when I give that advice, they tell me all the different reasons why my advice won't work. So they're either not listening, and they're thinking about their rebuttal, or they didn't want my help in the first place. So when you're praying to God, when you're reaching out to God, is that what you want? Do you want him to take care of something? Do you want him to intercede? Or do you just want to complain? And I'm not pointing any fingers here except this one, personal experience. I know that happens to me. So I'm going to assume it happens to some of you all. It happened to the Israelites. So why can't it happen to us? Father God, we come before you today, Lord. We just ask you to make us better people who are willing to listen to you. We ask that you continually forgive us, Lord, because we are always sinning. We're always coming up with new transgressions, and we're coming up with new ways to be disobedient, Lord. I just pray that even though we are flawed creatures, Lord, that we can be examples for you, that we can go out into the community, and that we can be examples for your love, that we can show your love to the community, Lord. And I pray that we lead by example. Because when we go out there and we do all these things and we do things that make people believe we don't trust you, that turns them away. And they have no reason to want what we have, Lord. So I just ask, Lord, that not only you use us, you draw people to you despite our actions, Lord. I pray that we have a great week coming up, Lord, and just continue to pour into us, Lord. We love you in your name, we pray.